Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm absolutely delighted to be with you this afternoon. I'm Charlotte Kahn. I hope you are enjoying all the conversations happening so far at the Conférence de Paris. It's a very busy time of the year, but you have given yourselves the time to come here and listen to what business and political leaders have to say about the numerous challenges the world is facing right now and how to tackle them, of course. So we'll do our best to cut through the shades and give you some insights to take things forward. And one of the big questions we are asking ourselves now, after the outcome of the US elections, of course, and the COP29 conference in Baku, is what's happening with the energy transition. What way forward when some governments and now some companies are taking a step back and retreating from sustainability commitments? Laurel Broten, thank you so much for being with us today. As the CEO of Invest in Canada, you have a unique story to share with us and to share with all the countries and individuals still seeking to decarbonize their economies. A reminder that Canada is already a global leader in renewable energy. And what's also valuable, of course, is your experience as a political leader with the sustainability mindset, who knows both the public and the private sector. So we are delighted to have you with us today, of course. And Laurel, to start with, this session title is called A Path Forward for the Energy Transition. During a time of much economic, of course, and geopolitical uncertainty, you have talked about the incoming US administration signaling an energy policy shift, some European countries questioning their sustainability objectives, and of course the financial commitments at Baku for COP29, which fell short of expectations. So what does it mean for the energy transition across the world, and in particular for Canada?
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here today, and I want to thank my friend Jeff for the applause extra early. Jeff, thank you very much. If Jeff Steiner is not your friend, you need to make him your friend because he's good at the encouragement. Listen, despite the fact that we are hearing globally and that some countries are pulling back from their climate commitments, for this audience internationally, let me be clear, Canada is not one of those countries. We are firm in our commitments at this point, and very pleased and proud that we made commitments at Baku to support developing nations and the work that needs to happen in those countries with $1.4 billion in blended finance for emerging markets. So I think that's just an example of the leadership that Canada is taking sort of well beyond our own boundaries. One of the things I often say when we talk about sort of the challenge with energy transition is that it is a green revolution. And if we think back to the Industrial Revolution and we say, why would we have thought that this green revolution was going to be easy? It's not easy. You're changing the way we do things. And during the first Industrial Revolution, you were building new and better all the time. We're building new and better, but it involves stopping doing some of the ways we were doing things in the past. And I think from a societal perspective, as you said, I was in public life and now I'm privileged to lead Invest in Canada and have been in the economic development space for just almost 10 years. Change is hard. Change is hard, and it involves really thinking creatively about how we can do things. And you need leaders both in business, who we've heard from some this morning here in this room, who are very progressive and championing that change. And you need leaders in government because there's two pieces to the puzzle. The government needs to be part of it. Industry needs to be part of it. So, I think those things are happening, and we all need to encourage the innovators amongst us, even if it's not ourselves, because it's those individuals who are going to find those solutions for tomorrow. And in the role that I have, I'm so privileged to be able to speak to those innovators all around the world, hear what they are trying to develop, and bring forward those solutions that we all need.
Change is hard, indeed, and it's not a linear process, is it? There are many setbacks along the way. And I think that here the message is pretty clear. The energy transition remains a very compelling story for Canada and, according to you, for the rest of the world, of course. What's been lacking somehow in this energy transition is finance, of course, but it's also a stronger commitment by the private sector. And I know you feel very strongly about this, Laurel. You've been a strong advocate for its role in funding the energy transition alongside government, of course. So based on all the events you attend, the conversations you're having with leaders at global companies about their commitment to the energy transition and to investments, what are you hearing at the moment?
So I'm hearing right around the globe, and for corporate leaders who have it in the DNA of their corporations now, that they are moving forward, looking for solutions, driving that change no matter what governments are saying. And we heard that in the room here today. CEOs are concerned about climate risk. They're concerned about the risk on their own business operations. We are seeing the impact of climate globally, and they have smart, thoughtful teams who are driving for better, who are coming up with solutions. And one of the challenges, as you've said, is the fact that this transition is costly. It's expensive. It takes investments to, generate the new technologies. But we're seeing that. I can just give a few recent examples in Canada that are really, really exciting. So Dow Chemical, it has its world's first net zero emissions ethylene cracker in Alberta. It's an $11.5 billion project, and its capacity to decarbonize the manufacturing process is something that is a game changer for us in Canada. BHP, who I know the CEO, Mike Henry, will be here tomorrow if he's not already here today. And this audience is going to be excited to hear about that BHP project in Saskatchewan, a potash project, Saskatchewan, where I was born. So I'm also excited that that's happening there. How is that connected to, well, first of all, it's going to be the greenest facility ever, but that fertilizer will help make greener, more productive crops globally. So I think that's another great example. And then just a couple of weeks ago, I was on the construction site of Asahi Kasei's facility in Ontario, being built in Ontario. They're part of the electric vehicle supply chain. A partner of Honda's building a massive new giga facility. So I think we're seeing those investments come in across the country, driven by corporations and leaders who understand the role that they play and who also believe it's good business decisions to be making sustainable investments.
Absolutely, and you've highlighted something important here, the fact that the private sector and the world of finance in particular may have been a bit slow at offering the various products and the right environment we need for further investments. But nevertheless, but there's something that is worrying to insurance companies in particular, and this notion of risk you've mentioned. They may not want to invest in technologies to tackle climate change, but they have to adapt, and that's very costly as well. So in terms of creating the right framework for further investments, in the US, for instance, the Inflation Reduction Act, it's been the largest US investment in climate policy. Canada also has significant incentives in place to support the energy transition. If the IRA is dramatically altered, what is going to be the impact on Canada's programs and incentives to stimulate energy transition in investments? Will you change your tune somehow? And beyond competitiveness, isn't green diplomacy at play here as well? Let's face it, with China, for instance, having a massive advantage when it comes to green tech, which of course would translate not just in economic, but somehow, diplomatic advantage. So how do you locate yourself on that map?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know the future ahead. But again, I go back to the conversations that I'm having with business leaders who have made investment decisions, who are building up, innovating amazing technology that is so solutions oriented, who are driven by having a positive impact on their communities, on their country, on the planet. And I don't think those things are only tied to incentives. You know, we talk sometimes when we're in government, we talk about carrots and sticks. Do you use a stick to get what you want, or do you use a carrot? So clearly a carrot is an incentive. But I also think society has really broadened. And, you know, I've been privileged to sit at leaders forums at COP with leaders at the Climate Week in New York, at Sustainable Markets Initiative, all those companies who are making moonshots, who are saying, we are going to strive for this. We've innovated this technology, and we think that this is a really solid solution. So what has Canada done in response? If we go back in time to when the Inflation Reduction Act came in, absolutely. I was here in Europe last year at this conference. People were talking about the impact of the IRA. What we did in Canada is we believed that the IRA drew eyes to North America. People looking at, well, what's happening in North America? And we responded, the country responded, the government responded, and as the Investment Attraction Agency, we were able to tell the story of Canada, of what we had put on the table, and the integration of the economies across North America, and the fact that Canada is a trading nation with multiple free trade agreements all around the world. And so I think that you respond to the situation that you have in front of you. That's certainly what the government of Canada will be doing. We renegotiated our current free trade agreement during President Trump's last mandate, and are leaning in to being able to continue to be a good partner to the United States, who is our closest neighbor.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into the reasons why Canada is a compelling investment destination for energy transition investments in particular. You mentioned incentives, of course. But what are you going to be doing in very concrete terms to make those investments possible? And a reminder, I mentioned it in my introduction, that Canada is already a global leader in renewable energy power generation, with 83% of your grid, of your power coming from non-emitting sources like renewable and nuclear energy as well. And of course, you are committed to a target of net zero emissions by 2050. So tell us more. Speaking
for sure. So 83% non-emitting electrical grid across the country is a huge part of our value proposition. For those who are corporate leaders in this audience, they know that when you start talking about scope 1, 2, and 3, you're going to have to measure out your impact on the entire life of your product. So that is critical. If you're building anything that is to drive sustainability, you need clean electricity. So that is a key part of it. In response to the Inflation Reduction Act, Canada has put in a number of tax credits for targeted areas: hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, clean tech, a variety of different sectors. And those tax credits are stable, are transparent, and are very easily understood by businesses who are determining what incentive will I get if I build this type of facility. So since the evolution to tax credits, we've been able to work closely with companies to have them clearly understand that calculation. So what else do you need when you're making your investment decision? You need resources, both natural and human resources, to say, where is your talent going to come from? So that is also a big part of what Canada has on offer in terms of a highly educated STEM-based talent stream and a diverse population that bring that lens of diversity and creativity. I mean, those statistics are very clear around the world that if you have diverse workforces, you have creative workforces, you drive innovation. So I think that's a big part of the conversation that we have. Where are we located? I live on the east coast of Canada. Those ports are the closest to Europe, and that's why you saw the Chancellor from Germany there a number of years ago with the agreement that Canada could deliver from those eastern seaboard ports, hydrogen as an example. In Western Canada, very much connected to Asia Pacific from the west of Canada, our closest neighbors to the south being the United States, and our free trade agreements, 51 countries, 15 trade agreements, 1.5 billion consumers is the access that those free trade agreements in Canada provide to those who establish themselves in Canada. So we have a very strong value proposition, one that I'm really privileged to be able to talk about regularly, but you don't have to just take it from me or our video. There's others that have said we have been recognized as second in the world for green energy by Rystad, first by Bloomberg NEF on the battery supply chain, and AT Kearney FDI Confidence Index always recognizes us globally as one of the top markets. So I think those barometers internationally demonstrate the consistency that Canada has had in our offering.
Thank you very much. What about electrification and EVs in particular in Canada? Because we've had a few setbacks within the industry, haven't we? What with Northvolt, for instance, it's really dampened investors' appetite. So what is your own take, or maybe your conclusion, on the long-term viability of this industry and its potential for the future? And same there again in relation to what you're doing in Canada.
So again, I think we go back to that revolutionary change. No one should think it's going to be a straight line, but what we are seeing is an increasing appetite by consumers. So Canada had EV sales were up by 35% in 2023. So significant increase, and EV adoption hit an all-time high at 16% of all new vehicle registrations. So I think that's a concrete demonstration of the adoption of e-vehicles, of the build-out of the support framework that is needed for electric vehicles, because again, a significant change. And constant evolution in terms of the range, all of the things. We have a cold climate in Canada, not always cold, but sometimes cold. And so, all of those elements were causing anxiety to people. I remember, in 2005, as Minister of Environment, being in one of the very first hybrid, we were just starting to talk about that, and the regulation wasn't ready and all of these things, but we've really made significant progress in that time, and the population is keeping up with us, and in many instances moving faster than the societal machinery is moving. So they push governments, and that's important, and they push that adoption, and we're seeing that in Ontario.
Thank you very much, Laurel. Now, before we conclude this session, yes, sadly, we're running out of time. I'd like to ask the room, maybe, do we have any sustainability leaders amongst us? Raise your hand if you're one of them.
Everybody should be putting their hand up. I know a lot of people in this room.
And the reason why I'm asking, Laurel, is because you mentioned, and you have a sustainability mindset, haven't you? It's a mindset at the end of the day. It's a culture. And a lot of people have been feeling a little bit depleted or deflated after the results of the US elections and what it means for the transition. So I'd like to conclude this session by asking you about how you feel about the longer term future of transition. Let's look ahead in 5, maybe 10 years. What do you think is next? And I also want you maybe to reflect on your own journey, because when you were elected, and I was back in 2003, Canada's government was set to become the first jurisdiction in North America to eliminate coal-fired electricity generation. At the time, coal represented about 25% of Ontario's electricity mix. 10 years later, it produced 0. Okay? So what's the right way to go about this, and how can you achieve success, especially when faced with, setbacks, I guess?
Well, I think we start by recognizing transition is always a journey, but you need to know on that journey, where do you want to go? So that moonshot concept of putting out that flag, this is where we're going. Do we know exactly how we're going to get here? Not necessarily. We don't know how we will get to net zero, but it is our North Star in our country of how are we going to make that movement. And it will be a lot of different pieces. You have to just recognize where we've come as a society. So in 2005, that was the Ontario government's first climate change plan. That's not that long ago. I had my twin boys that year, and they're not even 20 yet. So That's how far we've moved. So on the coal, eliminating coal from our electrical generation, you have to start building the blocks. It's like a puzzle. And that's what governments and that's what businesses do. What are the pieces? We can reduce consumption. Okay, that helps us here. We can build better other clean generation, solar, wind, other forms of electricity. You build those up, and that really is, when I've been privileged to sit at leaders' tables at COP and hear those who are driving hydrogen aviation, sustainable fuel aviation, that is really what is taking place. They're saying, we need to get here. And that's why I do feel hopeful, because there are such smart, amazing people around the world and in this room, and I see some of them here. I know some of these friends of mine in this room who are working hard every day to come up with those solutions. So I guess the encouragement I would have for all of us is to listen to those solutions, to come to learn that technology. I feel hopeful because I get to sit down with those companies every day and understand what they're building, what they're creating, what the opportunity is before us. And then we need to put the pieces together and figure out, well, how will we get that built and how will we scale it? Because it's great to have something that works on a micro scale, but we need it scaled. And I feel confident that when rooms like this gather around the world, you got the right people in here to make it happen. So that's my challenge to the room.
So it's on you, in other words. Thank you very much, Laurel. What a great conversation, which I would have liked to pursue, but we've got to wrap up. Thank you very much. Laurel Broten, CEO of Invest in Canada. Thank you.